We'll have to talk about that. Yeah. I don't know. So we think we fixed it. Test, test, test. We're good. Test, test, test.
I'm good on my end.
Okay, we're here. We're live. Take two. Now people got it. Hopefully they can find the link. It's still the same YouTube channel, so hopefully they'll figure it out.
Like Bill O'Reilly said, "Fuck it, we're doing it live."
Fuck it,
we'll do it live.
Yeah. So how you been, man? It's been a while. What's new?
Really, really damn good. Merry Christmas in advance. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and if you're an atheist or what's that religion that doesn't celebrate holidays? Have a nice
Satanism.
Holiday.
I don't know.
Satanism. No, what's the one? Is it Hare Krishna or no? What is the one where I think they knock on the doors? My friend dated a girl who was this. They don't celebrate any holiday. They don't do birthdays, Christmas, nothing. And so then like she had Christmas presents and it was like a new thing to her because her parents didn't let her celebrate. Now I'm going to Google it. Religion that.
Well, I'm a retired Catholic, so I'm pretty much, I just tell my everyone I know, please don't get me any gifts. I don't need anything. If I see something throughout the year, I'll get it for you. We don't.
Jehovah's Witness. That's what it is. You ever heard of that?
AKA people knocking on your door. Yes.
Aren't they the ones that knock on the doors?
Yeah, they were really nice. They always just came at inconvenient times.
Yeah. It's just an odd, like, why would you not? I can't remember what the theory is behind that. Why you don't celebrate holidays. Like,
save money, I guess.
Right? It is interesting too, because you think about like people like, okay, like you're going to celebrate me and you have to get me a gift on this day. Well, what if I want to get you a gift like 6 months from your birthday, but I was thinking about you and I just saw something. I was like, oh, Knocko would love this. I should get this for him. But I'm like, oh no, his birthday was 6 months ago. Or like, what am I going to hold on to it and wait 6 months? Or then I'm getting it to you and then getting you a birthday. Now I'm getting you 2 gifts. That's a lot. So
yes. I keep a thing in iPhone, my like iPhone notes. So if I hear someone talk about something that you like or whatever, I'll jot that down and put that in there and try to, if I see it or whatever, I'll get it for that person. So that's how that's my operating system.
Yeah. Do you have a big family get together for the holidays?
I just did for Thanksgiving. Yeah. We had the whole clan together and I went back home to New York City. So that was great. But for Christmas.
You have a famous relative in your family? Is that what you were telling me?
Oh, yeah. When you were asking about Bobby Kennedy?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like I tell everyone, I said, Ireland's a very small island. So everyone's related somehow. It's very, there's a reason why everyone's a drunk or a recovering drunk. So everyone shares the same genes. So yeah, there's that.
But he doesn't like come to your family functions or anything.
No.
It's like a second, third cousin, twice removed, one of those kinds of things or something.
Yeah, that's my grandmother was campaigned on his Jack Kennedy's campaign in 1960, and then Bobby's, and then I could continue the tradition when RFK Jr. Ran for president. So keep the lineage going.
That is so cool. And then Tulsi Gabbard follows you on Instagram too, which is crazy. She doesn't follow that many people, but she follows you.
Yes. I campaigned for her as well, and her sister was a U.S. Marshal. She was in law enforcement as well. So Tulsi comes from, same thing, same lineage as I. So yeah, those are my people.
That's crazy to think that she might have seen your post about the live like that. That's just weird to think. Like she probably didn't tune in or whatever, but just the fact that she might have seen it is kind of interesting. And Jocko follows you too, right?
Yeah. He's a good friend, great friend.
He's a good friend.
Yeah. We well, it's the music connection. We go back our lineage, our origin stories through the hardcore music scene. So we got a ton of common friends in from Cro-Mags to the Bruisers and Dropkick Murphys. So our bond came through music, and then all the other stuff was on the periphery.
And that was in New York or here in LA?
Here in LA, but we were running in the same circles in the New York hardcore scene, way back when. But we just you end up linking up with people later on in life, and connecting the dots. And you guys were we're in the same rooms and knew the same people. So it's a very small world. So I was just looking, speaking of small worlds, I was just looking at the tour dates for Agnostic Front, whose singer lives in Scottsdale by you.
Yeah.
And so that's always a mandatory hang whenever they come into town. We go to this venue, Brick by Brick, in San Diego. So we'll be linking up down there for sure for the Agnostic Front Murphy's Law show, which is going to be pretty epic.
Oh yeah, that sounds fun. So you're so into music. Are you always just a fan, or did you ever play?
I still play, just dabble as a hobbyist on, guitar, bass, drums. And, like every other kid, I had a little high school band and played in New York City on just little pickup gigs and stuff, but nothing serious.
Yeah. So did you know John Joseph of the Cro-Mags? I had him on my show. He's an interesting guy.
To say the least, to say the least. No, I met him a few times, through at shows and what have you, but my friend in that band is Harley Flanagan, who you should have on. He's just about to release his own documentary on himself and the band as a byproduct, and it's really a high level documentary, and it's called Wired for Chaos, if I'm not mistaken, and that should be doing the circuit soon. And he'd be a great guest to have on. He has, just like John, very colorful New Yorker, tons of fabulous stories and so many musicians have been inspired by him, Metallica, all the greats, once they got turned on to him, Scott Ian from Anthrax, all those guys, they paid homage to Cro-Mag. So I highly recommend that.
The stories John had, I mean, they were legit punk rockers, like living in like dilapidated buildings and stuff, and like dealing with gangs and things, and like almost getting shot and drugs and all that. I mean, it was sounded wild, and they never really had that like huge rock star success. I mean, they kind of just stayed like a kind of punk band, but they're legendary to some people.
Absolutely. Like I said, all those guys paid homage, Motorhead, they were the real deal, and those guys, walk the walk and talk the talk, and they both have fabulous autobiographies on their own. John and Harley, I recommend them both, and it reads fiction. It's so unbelievable, but I know it's to be true. I lived those streets, and I knew all those kids, and it's a wild story. But yeah, it's a shame they had a little crossover in the MTV Headbangers Ball days, but that music just can't get played on mainstream radio and what have you, so it stayed in that small milieu of hardcore and aggressive music, which is where it should be. And that type of music, when you see it at a stadium, like I went to see Cro-Mags open up for Misfits, actually with Jocko at here in LA, and it sounded great, it was fun, but seeing that type of music in a stadium, it's weird. It just doesn't work really.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of stadium shows, to be honest with you. Like, I just don't think I mean, maybe if it's outdoors, I feel like it can kind of sound good, but I feel like the echo in a stadium, in a domed stadium, it never sounds good.
Yeah, domed. This was an open air, so it's like I say, soccer teams don't play in clubs, and rock bands shouldn't be playing in soccer stadiums and football fields and all that stuff. So, yeah. I mean, certain music does work, but that type of music, it's hard to pull that off.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the smaller shows too, because unless I've got some sort of hookup or something, I don't want to be a cattle in the herd, especially if you're in the nosebleeds at a stadium and you're just watching the big TV screen or whatever. It's like, I don't know, it's just not the same. Like, I saw Foo Fighters and they were great. They're an amazing band. It was outdoor venue. It sounded decent, but I was so far back and I'm just watching the screen, and it's so different than when you see a band in the club and you can get right up on stage. And I mean, you're really like, you feel like you're more part of the show. I don't know.
Right. Isn't that wild when you find yourself looking at the screen? Doesn't that bum you out when you're thinking about it? Like, I paid all this money to look at a screen. I could do that at home on YouTube, which is a bummer, but visually, your eyes just get drawn to that, and your eyes get fatigued trying to stare at the guys on the stage.
Yeah, because I think it was like I was saying to somebody the other day about how if I'm going to a big show, I either want to be in the first, like, if you're not in the first 10 or 30 rows or whatever, you might as well just get a nosebleed seat, because you're going to be watching the screen So why pay like 500 for like a mid-range seat, just so that you can be closer to the screen? Because you're gonna watch the screen. You can't see the stage unless you're in the first 20, 30 rows or whatever, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
then the great part of, punk and hardcore is you getting on the stage with a band, jumping off it, moshing, slam dancing, whatever it is, stage diving.
you
And
still
then
do that?
no, well, it's like, I'll jump in the pit every now and then, just, maybe if a song or two that I'm really, really into, but then, stay on the outskirts and just kind of push people along as the circle pit's going, keep it regulated, pick people off the floor when they inevitably fall down. So just try to be a helper with that. But
So that's an interesting mix, like punk rock and being in law enforcement. Like, when did you make the switch? Did you go through like a rebellious phase where you were kind of a punk kid, where you were breaking the law and shit, or you just like the music?
I think every teenager, at least where I grew up, every teenager was breaking the law in some regard. Just, how big was it, But, just nuisance type stuff, fights, vandalism, lighting fires, shooting the occasional gun in the cemetery or whatever. Little stupid stuff that was somewhat harmless, but that, could lead to disastrous things if, all it takes is that one incident. So obviously, as a music fan first, and then you get into law enforcement second. So there were a lot of guys like me that are in the music scene still currently. It's just not broadcasted. So it's kind of funny. When I was going to a lot of these shows, obviously I was, straight edge, never did any drugs, to this day, stayed clean and straight edge. And I always knew, because that was my goal once I became 21, is to enter law enforcement. You couldn't have done any drugs or gotten arrested or any of that thing.
Didn't they change that rule though recently? They said, if it's been 2 years, you can smoke weed. If you've been sober from that for a year or two or something, right?
Yes. When I came through in the 90s, it was very stringent, and now as time has gone on and drugs are way more, permissive, and it's kind of gotten mainstream, especially marijuana usage, and some of the drug laws have gotten decriminalized or watered down from felonies to misdemeanors. Now they're looking at like the whole person, instead of just like one. All right, you did drugs once, you guys, like, okay, how long ago did you do drugs and how many times? So it's kind of on a case by case basis. So it has been relaxed just due to necessity. If they had applicants, lining up like they did in my day, they could be more selective. So I was going to all these concerts, and especially in the New York scene, it was very drug heavy. So I would just show up to a show, get in and get out. With all the guys around, including the guys in the band, in the bands were, drug users, and it was just part of the scene. And I was just there for the music. So, but it's funny to see how things spin around, and now all these guys are getting clean and sober, and all the appendages of, all right, you're in this camp, you do this job, we're anti this, we're anti that. That kind of melted away as everything's become more homogenized, which is kind of cool. So now you can get to actually associate with these guys and become friends with them now, and associate with them. So it's a good thing for the scene. So there's a lot of guys.
There used to be sort of an anti-establishment, anti-cop thing with punk rock.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's anti-everything. And, just whatever it is, we're rebelling against it, which is, just part of being a teenager. And all these guys in these bands were teenagers. So it was just natural. You're rebelling against your parents, school, the government, and law enforcement is just the ultimate visual form of government. So of course, yeah. And back then it was a real schism between the guys on the street and rebellious teenagers with music, especially punk rock, since it was so visual. And there was a huge clash just because there was a generation gap. Now, especially now where, people, like I said, the camps are kind of done. People listen to everything. As 10-year-old kids listen to punk rock now, and with faux hawks, and their parents dress them up in Ramones gear and all that. So it's been very watered down, and it's very accepted, which is a good and bad thing. So, kids aren't getting hit over the head at punk rock shows by cops with nightsticks and all that, and all the punk rock riots that you've heard about through, Henry Rollins and Black Flag, getting the Vans book and those type of things. So it's much more, harmonious.
Yeah, it reminds me of like I think it was a Decline of the Western Civilization, the first one that was like the punk one. That was kind of crazy. Like that kind of put a spotlight on the scene for me because I was never really into that scene as much, and it definitely was like before my time in the early 80s. But I've interviewed some of these guys like John Joseph and Lee Ving of Fear, and Doyle from the Misfits, if you count that. He didn't really give me many good stories, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely like it sounded like a really cool scene in New York, especially with the punk rock stuff.
Yes, yes, definitely. I mean, those guys were, that was ground zero, and they were breaking new ground. So as they're breaking new ground, the establishment is going to push back against that, and they're going to push back. So that's why I had a lot of volatile shows back then.
Yeah, but now, or is it like, do people do like the older punk bands? They kind of like appreciate law enforcement more now, and they don't. It's not necessarily anti that at this point in their careers.
I've noticed that. Like I said, yeah, I've seen that it's melted down a little bit. The walls have been brought down a bit, which is a good thing on both sides.
But you think too, and then like, what do you think of the whole like? Because there was a resurgence of punk in the '90s, but I don't know if you consider that stuff like. There's people that are purists that say like Green Day and stuff like that's not punk. That's not real punk rock. Like, what are your thoughts on bands like that?
I mean, everything has to evolve. I mean, it's, you have 6 strings and you can only do so much with it. There's only so many notes. So when something evolves, it's gonna distort into something you may or may not like. Yeah, I dig some of their songs. That, I don't know the catalog, but if I hear a few things, I'm like, yeah, they got some really catchy songs. I've seen them once live. A buddy of mine brought me for free at a small theater, and I was like, wow, now I get it. These guys are really, really tight, good, catchy pop songs. Like I said, I'm not going to listen to it every day, but I appreciate it. But it's always the whole purist thing. I mean, I don't know. It's they say be open to everything and attached to nothing. If it turns you on, go with it. I mean, I never pigeon myself into one genre. I'm listening to everything from classical to fusion to metal to hip hop. If it turns you on, go for it. So I think, and then a lot of it's, due to jealousy, the punk rock and hardcore scene, like you said, it just never really, there's very few bands that transcended into real success. So if someone breaks out of that, everyone's going to be, it's that crabs in the barrel. People are going to be, how dare you be successful and try to grab you and bring you back into that barrel. You should be down here with us. You should be miserable. So God bless those guys for breaking out and having that chance and then exposing people. So when you listen to Green Day, people that truly appreciate them, like, all right, let me look into them, who influenced them. And then you could scroll back and then find out all the little unknown bands. And then those guys get successful, kind of like what, for Metallica, like the Misfits did, that Cliff Burton did for the Misfits. Like, oh, what's, Cliff wearing? What's this Misfits? And then they did these covers and then people discover those guys. So I think it's a beautiful thing when these bands kind of move on and prosper, and then people dig back into the catalog and what turned them on.
Yeah, like Guns N' Roses and the Spaghetti Incident. I mean, they just had a bunch of punk bands that I had when I was 15 or whatever. I'd never heard of these bands from these punk bands from the 70s and early 80s, and I tried to go back and listen to some of that stuff. Yeah, like the Misfits, and I think Metallica. It wasn't just the Misfits; they had some really interesting, like, Lars was like a collector. Like, he would find obscure things they were really cool. And then I think Metallica is like one of the best bands that does covers. Like, they make their versions sound better than a lot of the originals, in my opinion.
Right. They put their own unique spin on it and, pay homage to it, but then turn it into their own, which is it's the hallmark of a good cover. But
yeah.
I don't know if Guns N' Roses did that with the Charlie Manson song. What'd you think about that one? Remember at the hidden track?
Oh yeah, I feel like they did that just to fucking be controversial, just to because like why else would you cover that song? And like they just wanted a controversy. They're like, oh, we're not supposed to do this, so we're gonna do it, and that was always their shtick. I think that's why I gravitated towards that band so much, is because like especially in the lyrics on Use Your Illusion, there was a lot of like fuck you. And like, I'm going to do what I want. And like all this stuff. It was that I like respect. Cause at 14, you're just like, oh, I'm not allowed to say those things. I can't tell adults fuck off and all that. I can't tell kids my own age to fuck off. I didn't have that kind of confidence, and those guys did. And so that's why I think I looked up to him so much. The music
Yeah.
spoke to me anyways. Yeah.
Remember that back in the days of hidden tracks on an album. I mean, you can't do that with streaming. You have to see that, the track is listed, right?
Yeah. It doesn't work as well. No, I know. I mean, that
Yeah.
is a downside to the streaming. I know everyone bashes the streaming. I really love it though, because it allows me to discover so many different new artists. And I mean, I always try to support, if I find a band I like, I try to support them by, following them on social media, going to their shows, buying merch, having them on my podcast, or whatever way that I can. But I don't buy music anymore. I just don't. I know people that are purists that will buy the vinyl record. Are you one of those guys?
No, God bless those guys. I was just at
Yeah.
a record store for like the first time in a long time for actually an agnostic front book signing,
Hmm.
and it was a huge vinyl place, and so everyone was discussing, oh, did you get this vinyl and that vinyl? I'm like, I'm not a collector of items, so the only thing I kind of collect is books, and that's usually just signed books that I got from authors and friends. But yeah, the smartphone, I mean, unbelievable. The
Yeah.
whole world's catalog is right there, and if you mention a band, I could listen to a few cuts, and if I like it, I'll like you said, follow them and support them any way you can, buying merch, seeing them live always. So yeah.
Yeah. You're a minimalist. I'm looking at your wall right now. It's very empty. That's by
My
design. They just don't like to have a lot of things. Some people are like that. I wish I should be more like that.
I say collect memories, not material. So my ultimate dream, and when you live with a woman, it's kind of hard. She's the opposite. Even though I'm breaking her down through like a war of attrition, my idea is like to live like almost like in a good luxury hotel where there's very little things around, and that's one of the reasons why you feel good when you enter a hotel. The weight of the room is very, very absent, but what you have is
Yes.
at the highest quality. So the best TV, the
Yeah.
most comfortable couch, the most comfortable bed, and very sparse items that can get away, so you just feels fresh and clean.
And
So
preferably a nice balcony with a ocean view, or some sort of like river or forest or waterfall or something that you could go out and just relax and enjoy nature. I don't know if you've ever been to Rocky Point, Mexico, but it's like 3 or 4 hours from where we live. And so we haven't been there in a while, but we want to go back, because every room that you rent on the beach, it has a balcony with a view of the ocean. And it's like amazing. I mean, for someone who lives in the desert, I can't just, drive over to the ocean. It takes a few hours. So when I get a room down there, I just go out on the balcony and I could just sit there for hours and just listen to the waves. It's so quiet and relaxing.
yes, yes, I live 4 blocks from the beach, so that's how I live my life.
Yeah. So do you go out to the beach a lot? Like my girlfriend's sister moved to LA, and she said she didn't go to the beach that much after she moved there. Like the novelty wears off.
Yes, man, that's the beaches are empty in LA. Very few people go to the beach for some reason. It's crazy. But
Well,
yeah,
are they though? There's a lot of homeless people that move in, right? And they just camp out and,
that was up in Venice, and they've been eradicating them.
oh, really?
Yes, the politics of California have definitely shifted, as has the rest of the country. And yeah, the tide has turned, and people, like human nature, has to bottom out, has to get, the place has to fall apart, and for people to say, oh wow, we should do something. It's never in that in between mode. That's how most humans operate. And so finally it bottomed out, and out here in California, they're moving people along. So it's a
So
good thing.
what is the solution with that? Because I mean, we've talked about this before, and like, you were in that documentary about the Cecil Hotel, and they go down to Skid Row, and you're explaining Skid Row, and it's like so just depressing and sad, and that area's just gotten, I thought, bigger over the years, right? Are they
Oh
finally
yeah.
clearing it out, or what are they doing with it?
It just, like I said, it's just starting, and
Starting to clear out. Okay.
yes, they're starting to do the crafted laws and legislation that's starting to clear people out and come up with some long-term solutions.
Do you
So
think that as a police officer, though, see, to me, I don't know if this is politically correct or this is the right thing to say, but to me, it seems like you need to arrest these people. Like they need to be not people who are smoking marijuana, but people that have gotten to the point where they're homeless. It's usually hard drugs like fentanyl and stuff. And if we just let them live on the street and don't do anything, like they're going to die. They're going to OD on fentanyl or whatever other hard drugs they're taking. But if you lock them up, I can't remember who I had on my show, but somebody was saying like, yeah, it took them like 6 times of being arrested. It might've been John Joseph. And then until they finally like got clean, like going to jail, it does give them at least a break of, it forces them to be sober, even if it's just for a few days or a week or something, right?
Correct. It's kind of like if you have a 6-year-old kid and you don't discipline him or put up any parameters or, anything, and you let him have the run of the house and he's eating cookies every day, he's eating ice cream, he's not going to bed on time, he's not doing homework, what have you, what do you think is going to happen to that kid? So adults, same thing as kids, they just outgrew their clothing. Everyone has to be put on a timeout if they don't, follow the rules just for their own sake, not for the parents. Like, I'm doing this for you. It's like, it's like when your parents are disciplined, this is gonna, it's gonna hurt me more, it's gonna hurt you. We don't want to do this. Arresting people should be the final option, the last option. But you have to take some kind of corrective measures for that person. You have to save them from themselves. And that's all that is. So we save them from themselves and then try to get them the help. And if they don't want the help, you have to force people to get the help.
Yeah. I mean, and there are some people who are, sometimes it goes hand in hand with the drugs and the mental illness. I guess there are some people that are probably, they might not be on drugs. They might just be 100% mentally ill. And in which case they need some sort of services or probably long-term care or hospitalization. Right. I mean, I used to work I did an internship in a mental hospital. Boy, that you really learn a lot about life when you do an internship, something like that. I mean, there's people that will come in and I mean, you can give them medication. You can do, I mean, they're not taking drugs because they're in our care or whatever. And they're mentally ill. And there's no pill. There's no magic pill that fixes them. They're just going to really struggle. And they're going to need help. Those people are going to need some sort of support. I don't think they don't need to be in jail because they're not criminals, but they need some sort of help. So I think sorting that all out, it's a big mess. I know California threw like $15 billion at the problem and it got worse. So
Right.
that was a big struggle for sure. But hopefully that's good to hear that you feel like things are headed in the right direction finally.
Yes, it's good to see, and it's long overdue.
Yeah, because I'm from Seattle and I'll never forget, it was like 2010 or so. I came back to visit and I just saw all these tarps and I was like, what is going on? I thought there was like a festival I thought it was a concert or something. I was like, what's going on? Like, and it was like, no, people camping on the streets. And like, I didn't know. I was like, I thought that wasn't legal. I thought, how did we legalize camping in the like middle of the road so everyone could see? It was a strange phenomenon. So, but that's good to hear that hopefully that Seattle will fix it as well.
Yes. Yeah, people have had enough and they said, this is madness. The social experiment isn't working. So we have to, put the kids in a timeout, take away the keys from the candy store.
Is that a lot of what you deal with as a police officer is arresting people that have just done too many drugs, fentanyl or harder drugs, or even weed sometimes?
No, like I said, arresting people was always my last option. It was like, don't make me be the bad guy. Make me be the big brother. That's what I want to be. And that's always my course of action when I'm walking into a scenario. But then there's situations where someone forced your hand and they went, they crossed the Rubicon and have to arrest them. So unfortunately, they put the noose around their own neck, and then I'm just bringing them to the podium there. So, but it's always prevention. Prevention's the step one, and then we go from there. So
yeah, where are you at right now? Because you're not a street cop anymore, aren't you? A detective or no?
I just recently retired, so I'm Joe Civilian like you are, Chuck.
Oh, so you're totally retired? Because I thought for some reason you're like detective, and then didn't you like retire, kind of rehire thing or something? Or you
I joined another agency for fun, and but then it was impacting my social life. I was missing a lot of concerts, family events, friend events, and hobbies I love to do. And I was like, all right, I don't need the money. I was just doing it for fun to work with a buddy, and so I re-retired. So my girl
Oh.
calls me a double retiree now. So we shall see. Now I'm a full-time hobbyist. I work for myself now.
So what do you do like during the day? I mean, there's not concerts and stuff during the day. So what do you?
Right. Research, helping out people on projects, volunteering for campaigns. So, um, a lot of philanthropic work, and then working on a book for myself. So that's always, I have a lot of friends that are authors, and I've always been a voracious reader. And so that's something that now I have the full time to dedicate to that. So that's what I love doing.
Nice. What is your book going to be about? Just like your life as a cop?
No, no, that doesn't interest me. But it's going to be a novel, kind of an origin story based on an iconic movie. Is about as much as I could say.
Okay. And origins, like, so it's like a fictional, is that like, do you have the rights for this or is there like a copyright thing here? Cause,
That's what I'm. Yeah, that's what I'm in the midst of working out.
okay. Wow. That sounds very intriguing. I will look forward to seeing that. You'll have to come back on the show and promote that when you're,
I would love to.
yeah. And you're still doing you have a podcast too, right?
We're in a hiatus. My partner was dealing with some issues, and we want to come back in 2025. So
Yeah. Have you noticed it's harder to get views and guests and like has your podcast numbers and stuff slowed down this year, like when you did last do it? Because I know like for a lot of the other podcasters I've talked to, it seems like this year's been rough.
you know what? It was increasing, but
Oh,
I heard what you were saying. Yeah, I heard similar. I mean, I guess that's just because the explosion of podcasts is still growing by the day. So, and it seems like people's podcasts are getting longer and longer. So there's only so many hours in a day, or at least the ones I listen to. It seems like 3-4 hour podcasts. Like, wow, it's taking up a huge chunk of my time. And then people coming out with more and more interesting topics. So,
yeah,
and
that is tough. I know because like I'm a huge Rogan fan. I love Joe Rogan. I think he has some of the most interesting guests, and he's made people famous. Like I feel like I know Jocko from Rogan and
yep,
stuff like that. But yeah, I can't. There's no way I can listen to every Rogan episode. But I do think there's some people that whatever their job is, whether it's like woodworking or something, they're doing something like construction maybe, and they can just put headphones and listen to podcasts for 8 hours. So I mean, you could listen to like 3 Rogan episodes potentially. So
yeah, that's an interesting thing, right? In society, see, like everyone's walking around with earphones on, headphones, pods over the ear, and it just seems like everyone's disconnected. Which I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing for society. It's great that you're learning while you're doing whatever, but at the same time, we're losing that human interaction with, especially with coworkers and just people on the street. You just say hello to somebody, or just they're walking with their head down, oblivious to the surroundings. It just seems like you go to a coffee shop and no one talks to anyone. Everyone's just in their own little world. So I don't know. It's an interesting, cultural shift we're in the midst of, I think, right now.
yeah, I've noticed that too. That's what I've been thinking about a lot with my podcast because I was trying to do like 2 or 3 a week, and then I just not really by design, but I just dialed it back a little in 2024. I didn't do as many, and I think in 2025 I'm going to do even less. I maybe do like 1 a week because my thought process is just like I don't know that I'm necessarily bringing anything good into the world. Like I feel like the world doesn't need more content. The world doesn't need more podcasts and TikToks and Instagram reels and all, I think we have so much content out there that's great. Like, and I thought I was really good at it, but the world disagreed with me. I'm not one of the best. So, I maybe just leave it up to the people who are the best and try to focus on something else. But I don't think I'll ever give up because I love it. I love having these kinds of conversations with people like yourself. So, I still want to do it, but I think it's be more like a hobby and try to focus on something else. I don't know what that is though.
That's the thing. You have to be your number one fan. You want to do it for yourself, and if people listen, great. If they don't, oh well. But you want to have those conversations. You want to be intrigued and curious and learn from others. And people come along the ride. More power to them. But yeah, you definitely have to be there for the right reasons. And if you can make money from it, awesome. But it's like like musicians. You playing the guitar was you love the guitar, you love the sound of it, and if you get together with some chums and form a band and other people love it, great. But if not, we're still jamming in the basement. We're improvising, we're playing, and it's for us. So this is the same thing. This is an art, as a medium. We're doing it for us. You know, I'm not getting paid to do all this stuff, but I love talking to people that are just as passionate about music and life as I am. So
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is one interesting thing about technology. And you talk about like people wearing their headphones and putting their head down and stuff. Like in some ways, the technology has made us more isolated from one another, but in other ways, like I can have these conversations like with yourself. And, you know, all this week I've been doing live streams with my friends that are all over the country. In fact, my friend Rob is he's in Europe, he's in England, and I'm having this conversation that I wouldn't be able to have without the technology. So there is pluses and minuses. But I think you're right. I think overall, it seems like we're relying too much on that. It's too much technology. There's too much content. I want to dial it back and less content, less technology, more real life, more real interactions. It's very different. And I really enjoy that. It's nice to just like put your phone in another room and just, okay, like let's not be on our phones. Let's actually just have a conversation. It's amazing.
let's do it tomorrow. Phone-free Fridays. Get that trending. And
Yeah.
it's liberating not
I
being
mean,
attached to that.
even just for like a few hours, like, I mean, obviously if you go to a movie, you know, you're not really supposed to be on your phone. I think most people are pretty good about not putting their phone in a movie, but why not other things? Like if you're going out to dinner, why not put the phone away at dinner? Or like I just had Thanksgiving with my family and I was like, I'm just going to put my phone in the bedroom. Like they're only here for a few hours, you know, it's like, I want to like really be 100% invested in my family and not checking to see if I have any messages or emails or whatever. So yeah, I think if we can get back to that, I think that would be a good thing for the world and especially America. Like cause I know like in China, I think they have TikTok there, but they have like limits on it. Like it shuts off at like 9 or 10 PM or something.
I
And
heard I always wonder if that was true. They shut down, the internet or whatever they have over there.
oh, was it the
I
full
like
internet? I thought it was just
I
TikTok or something.
I don't know. You hear so many rumors. I don't know, but it's kind of an interesting idea, right? At 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock, Wi-Fi. It's like the TVs. Remember when 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever? Well, no channels. It just went to static. Right.
Yeah.
Get to bed.
Yeah.
Give
I
it a
mean,
break.
there is something to be said about sometimes, you know, if you work a night shift or you can't sleep or whatever, you know, it's nice to have those options that we have now. Like there's so many movies on Netflix. And like you said, there's so many podcasts that are 3 or 4 hours. I mean, there's no shortage of content. It's like, but maybe we need less content and more real life interactions. And so how do you bring more people together in real life? Like that's a hard question. Like concerts, I guess, shows, things
I
like
have
that,
I have a
events.
friend. Actually, Tulsi reposted a lot of his stuff. His name's Khalil. He has a great like a health food type spot called Sun Life Organics, and in his store it says, "No, we don't have like a Wi-Fi password. Um, put down your phone and enjoy a good conversation. If not, call your mom, something like that." And I thought that was great. Just a little simple message of, be connected, have a good conversation with whoever's there, and give it a little break. You're there to eat something healthy and keep your mind healthy by staying away from the radiation from the phone and just the toxicity of just compulsive scrolling. So it starts with that, just one person, and it could cascade. So it's a movement. I heard something about there was a movement, some kids, I forgot what they called it, but where they're just disregarding the phone altogether in like the 12, 13, 14-year-old range. And I thought that was beautiful. So it's like
Wow.
anything else, in the cultural shift where, everyone's all in on the phone, and gradually we're going to dial it back and we'll be all out and then find that middle ground. So that's what life is with humans. We're constantly trying to find that balance between, good and evil. And let me find that good, in between. So all this stuff is still new, social media and podcasts and all that. And it's great. Like you said, we've never met these people overseas. I just had coffee with a guy from Australia that I met on Instagram, on the cop who does jujitsu. It's like never would have been able to do that and meet people and have great conversations. So it could be used for good or bad. We just gotta find that common ground. So we'll get there eventually. But as far as your podcast, I think like the once a week tactic is really good. It's kind of like if you think back to like good television, like The Sopranos, every Sunday it was a very special thing. It's like, all right, once a week, we're gonna put down what we're doing, and we're gonna watch or listen to Chuck's podcast. So whatever he has on, we know he had a week to prepare for this. It's going to be solid. So let's do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd love if I had a fan base that would actually. But it's funny you mentioned Sopranos. I was sick last week for a few days, so I was like, oh, okay, I can't do anything. I'm gonna like watch a show or whatever. And I was like, well, what's one of the best shows? Sopranos. So I started binging The Sopranos, and now I can't stop. I'm in the last season. There's only like 15 episodes left. I've just been binging them for as much time, which again, it's probably too much technology with that, but I've just been addicted. I forgot how great that show is because I haven't watched it for like 10 years. Like you've watched every episode, I'm assuming.
Yeah, one of my old neighbors was the FBI agent handler. Great guy, another fellow New Yorker, Louis Lombardi, and awesome guy. So it was great just to see him on there. He was on 24, but great character actor. But yeah, I was a huge fan, and I always threatened to go back and rewatch those episodes as well. It's just, again, it goes back to so much content. Every place you go to and meet someone, and hey, have you watched this show? All right, let me put that on the list. So, and then Sopranos one goes down back to the bottom. But I would like to run that back and go from episode 1, season 1, and see if it's as great as I remembered it or in my memories. Sometimes you go back to these older shows or other things that you in your youth, and you're like, it was all right, because there was nothing else popping during, in 2001 or whatever, 2003, and that was the best thing going. But I think Sopranos would probably hold up.
Yeah, to me it holds up. It's the characters. You just get so wrapped up, like James Gandolfini, Tony Soprano. I mean, he just does such a good job with that character. You're like so fascinated. He's so complex because he's like, on the one hand, he can kill some guy and not feel anything, and then if somebody hurts an animal, he freaks out. Or if somebody hurts a girl, like he'll freak out about that. But then he could kill some guy that he thinks is a piece of shit, and he'll feel no guilt at all. He's just an interesting guy. Did you ever deal with mafia or gangs like that in law enforcement?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I just watched a podcast. It was John Gotti Jr., who was actually the third. Found out through the podcast his father was Junior, but anyway, they called him Junior, the son of John Gotti. And it was on, I think it was the PPD podcast. I forgot what it was, but anyways, I would highly recommend someone check it out. And it was fascinating because when I was in high school in Queens, a good portion of kids that went to, especially in my year in high school, were all sons of the Gambino soldiers. And one in particular was a captain. He was Angelo Ruggiero. My friend was Angelo Ruggiero Jr. And you find all these things out kind of through rumor and innuendo, and then it gets confirmed later on in life, and it's funny. So he mentioned him a lot. John Gotti Jr. Was good friend. They were kind of similar in age, and they were almost like family. And so it was interesting to hear him talk about my old college classmate. So high school classmate.
I'm looking him up right now. It's so because it says Ruggiero, right? Ruggiero, is that what you said?
Yeah, Angelo Ruggiero was
his son.
Was John Gotti's right hand man, his captain, but my friend, his son was Angelo Ruggiero Jr. And it was a bummer to find out he, ultimately, stepped into, replaced his father into the life, and supposedly became a made man, and then ended up doing a considerable amount of time. And John Gotti Jr. talked about that, how the feds tried setting him up by putting a rat into his cell when he was in prison down in Florida and what have you. So yeah, I grew up with a lot of those guys.
So is your friend, is he still in prison now, or did he get out?
Or after hearing that podcast, I looked him up, and thankfully he's not in custody anymore. He was up until a few years ago, it seems like. So
do you think he went back to the mafia life? Because
I mean, that's the life. Is you either you end up dead or in prison, or you end up taking your own life. I mean, it's not too many. Some very harsh roads. John Gotti Jr. Somehow he says he got out of the life, which I hope he did. Bravo to him, and I hope Angelo did. But that's not the norm. It's usually once you're in, you're in. That's all you know. Especially once you become a felon and you're incarcerated. There's very few options for you. This country, says prison and jail is rehabilitative, but it's really not. It's just strictly punitive.
Well, and
And
especially with that thing in particular, that's what's so fascinating about the Italian mafia is like, because they take an oath and it's supposed to be for life and you're supposed to never, but I just wondered if that was still even really an active thing. And supposedly, if you look on like the internet, it is. There's still captains and bosses and all I mean, it's still, but I'm like, what do they do? Like, is it still just a similar kind of thing like drugs and stuff? Because it seems like a lot of the things that are the most unethical that maybe are now legal, like a lot of the things that are like the most lucrative, unethical things like pharmaceutical companies, a lot of the things they do, I feel like would have been maybe mafia back in the day, but now it's like legal. You petition to the politicians or whatever, and you buy them out, and then whatever shitty thing you want to do, you can legalize it basically.
right, it makes you think, who are the real gangsters? Is it the ones with the ties and nice suits and white clean shirts, or is it the guy running numbers and loan sharking on the street? If you and I throw money down on the street and lend money to people, they call it loan sharking. A bank does it and charges 25% interest. They just call it business as usual. It's like, okay, who's the real gangster here? So,
Right. And like sports gambling is legal in a lot of states. Weed is legal in a lot of states. I mean, it's like they're running out of things that are illegal. A lot of these things are being legalized. I mean, unless you're doing like selling fentanyl, and I know that's a big thing, but I don't know if Italian mafia is into that or like what they would be into. It's kind of interesting.
it is.
Phone scams. I guess that's still a big thing, right?
I mean, whatever, if you're a criminal, you're gonna fill the void. You're gonna find a way to make money. That constant hustle. It's just it'll take different flavors. But that said, I hope I'll put it out there to the universe. I'd love to talk to Angelo once again and reconnect, and I hope he's doing well.
Is there or what are the big gangs in LA still like that you dealt with? Did you deal with the Bloods and the Crips at all?
Of course. I mean, it's the Hispanic gangs and the Black gangs are the majority of the gangs. Take up make the most crime stats in LA. But I had a particular focus in on prison gangs, particularly the Aryan Brotherhood and Nazi lowriders. A little bit with Public Enemy Number One, and a little bit with outlaw motorcycle gangs. So that was kind of the white gangs. You could put a broad umbrella term to it, was kind of my focus. So I just found it so intriguing, since in New York City that wasn't really the culture, prison gangs and that type of thing. So
What do you mean prison gangs? Like they start in prison or they're actively in prison at the time, or what do you mean by prison gang?
yes, in California Department of Corrections nomenclature, a prison gang it's a gang that's originated from the prison only. There's been an outlier here and there, but it originated in a prison, but then it spills out into the street. So, you have Mexican Mafia, Aryan Brotherhood, Nuestra Familia, who are the, I'll put it this way, California is like, it's very segregated. So when you go to prison, it's like a dividing line. It's more or less like Bakersfield is. Anything north of Bakersfield is considered like Northern Hispanics, and anything south of that's called Southern Hispanics or Southsiders. So somehow they made that like the DMZ, and so you'll have the Southern California gangs going after each other on the street, but then once they go into prison, they realize, hey, we have to team up on someone else. We got to team up together and go against the Northern Hispanics. They're our enemies. So you'll have the Northern Hispanics and the Southern Hispanics warring with each other. And then the Black gangs more or less align with, since there's less of them, they'll align with the Northern Hispanics. And then what they call the white boys, Peckerwoods, they'll throw down and throw their chips in more or less with the Southsiders, the Southern Hispanics. So it's really interesting, the dynamics.
Well, yeah, I had this guy that he cut my hair, and he now he's cleaned up his life. He cuts hair for a living, but he used to be into drugs a lot, and he was a drug dealer. And so he went to prison. He got busted with like, I think it was just weed he was doing, but he got sent to prison, and that's where he learned to cut hair. But he said that was interesting about prison is that everyone is sorted out by race, right? He said like Mexicans are here, blacks are in this group, white people are in this group. And he said he said that's kind of like what's going on right now with society. They're trying to separate everybody, define people by race. He's like, yeah, this reminds me of prison. I was like, oh, that's such a weird take on that. Like that is the other place where people are, that's a very big part of their identity is race. And like that, it used to not be like that, just in society, like whatever, 10 or 15 years ago, but now that's becoming more important. And he said it reminds him of prison.
It's a great analogy. Yes. If you could divide people against you could make more money, you could build up power base, if it's spread out in a prison and everyone has their own little clique or whatever going on, there's no hierarchy. There's not going to be any bosses. There's not going to be people holding major territory. It's kind of like if we didn't have states, if it was just everything was just independent, it was truly a United States and we didn't have governors and what have you, the power base for these guys wouldn't be as strong. So it's the same thing in prison. They just trying to grab all the marbles and, call the shots. So that's why.
Are the white gangs, is that kind of like Sons of Anarchy? I need to finish that show because that seemed to do a good job of showing those like biker gangs and stuff.
Yes, Chuck Zito, I believe, was one of the technical advisors from the Hells Angels on there, probably among many others. So they took a lot of material from all the outlaw motorcycle gangs. So that would there's the Hells Angels per se, there's been black and Hispanic members throughout, but it's primarily white based culture. So that would kind of fall into the umbrella of sort of white gangs, if you want, paint with a broad brush.
Yeah. What did you hear about the Venezuelan gangs in Aurora, Colorado? They're like taking over apartment buildings, and like I heard on the radio that they accosted this couple and they were torturing them and ripped their fingernails out and shit. I was like, oh my God, these guys don't fuck around.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about that. Yeah, you don't know what's fact or fiction nowadays, but I'm sure, yeah, you're going to get these small little ethnic groups and they're going to all huddle. They're going to stay together in one tiny little pocket neighborhood. They'll start with one apartment building, then it's the block, and then it's the neighborhood. That's kind of like how MS-13 started in Los Angeles. U.S. intervened over and meddled with politics over in Central America, and then it caused all these refugees and to flee from all this war and despair, and they poured into L.A. And then, even though the Hispanic, they didn't get along with the Mexicans because they spoke different dialects and different culture. So the Mexican Americans shunned them. So they were in a small pocket west of downtown LA, this Rampart division. So they formed, same thing, one block, one apartment building, 2 blocks, and then it spread, and they formed their own gang, and then it spread like wildfire as time went on.
Crazy. Which gang do you think is the scariest? Like which one would be the one that you would not want to be captured by?
MS is pretty brutal, especially the guys that came from, direct from El Salvador, but that place is changing drastically too by their leadership. But it doesn't matter. Every gang is going to have its wild child. It's going to have some really smart individuals that are very charismatic that'll rise to the top, and then you'll have your people that are just straight out there just for pulling a trigger, and then there's other guys that are just there for status, for women, and there's going to be guys that are just there for money. So it's the same thing with, you get a group of individuals in any gang, political group, friend group, you're going to have your good and bad, and it can get messy real quick if you entangle with the wrong people. Same thing for the motorcycle gangs. There's guys that just want to raise hell and fight and have the beer belly, and there's guys that are just doing drugs, and then there's guys that are there for the hustle and everything else, and there's guys, some real tough guys that are just straight up apex predators that will hurt you. That's what they get off on.
Yeah, I think that's what's so crazy, like watching The Sopranos, is like how many people die in that show and get murdered, and they never solve their murders. Like, how realistic is that? Because now it seems like there's so much forensic evidence, and with DNA and stuff, like you can't just like murder someone and then just get away with it. Or is this a thing where when they kill drug dealers or other criminals, cops don't really spend a lot of time investigating those murders?
No, that's a fallacy. My better half works. She works primarily gangs in South Central Los Angeles, and they have what's called a clearance rate, which means they 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 the FBI has stats on they call them clearances. So if you solve the case, it's called a clearance. So their clearance rate is I believe it's like maybe 84%. So that means they're solving 84%
Oh,
of the homicides in South Central, and the majority of those homicides are all gang homicides.
huh.
A few slip in there, domestic violence here and there, or just a random homeless type thing, but it's all gang homicides, and they're really good at what they do. So they're paying extreme attention to everything that goes on there, and it has a high success rate. And like you said, it's very hard now to get away with stuff. Do just this thing. I mean, everyone's being tracked. I mean, you're on camera in the poorest of neighborhoods. People have Ring cameras everywhere. Your phones. These guys have social media accounts. These kids that are out there doing homicides. Yeah, it's license plate readers. Technology is so advanced now. It's really, really hard to get away with crime if the resources are there to properly investigate them.
Yeah, that's what makes me think, even though the Italian mafia, I mean, I think it is still in existence, it's probably not the same. They probably don't do a lot of those kinds of murders because they can't get away with it as easily as they could have in the 70s and 80s.
Right, right. When you relied on just primarily eyewitnesses, and
Yeah, and then they would intimidate the witnesses and stuff, and like, is that the
correct.
same too? Do you think like serial killers? Because we really haven't had a new serial killer. I mean, there's some that have gotten caught for things they did in the 70s and 80s, but there hasn't really been a lot of recent serial killers that I'm aware of.
Yeah, yeah. That they're still out there, but it's not in an abundance of like you said, the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It's it's so much harder, and then technology and just law enforcement in a whole cooperates a lot better with other agencies, and there's way more connectivity between agencies across from the states and city to city, which enables better sharing of intelligence and facts and evidence and what have you.
Yeah, there's a guy on my podcast, and he has this thing. I think it's just like a nonprofit, but he did this mapping of all these unsolved murders and tried to map where they were and stuff and the method. And he thinks there may be a serial killer in the kind of in the Midwest somewhere, like around Chicago, Ohio. Like some of these murders that are unsolved may be connected. So there could be someone out there, which is really crazy to think about, that someone could get away with like a large number of murders in this day and age.
Yeah, a lot of it depends on jurisdiction and timing, how they're spacing it out. If you play your cards right and you're transient with your activities, you might be able to slip through the radar. It's chances of very low percentage, but it can be done.
But you'd have to be like a Dexter, right? Like you'd have to lay out the plastic and stuff, because if you leave one hair, they find that, boom, your DNA is there. And if they ever, link your DNA to that murder scene, you're caught.
hmm Yep, we had one of our own detectives get caught in a cold case when she murdered her ex-boyfriend's, I think it was fiance, a wife, and it came back 20 something years later, and through you know
I
great
think I
great
saw that.
detective.
Was that on Forensic Files?
Oh, I'm sure it was. There's been a book about it. A good friend of mine, Matthew McGough. It's called the Lazarus Files, but there's plenty of documentaries and little mini movies about it. It's wild.
Okay, yeah. I
It's
feel like
amazing.
yeah, because like, yeah, it was like 20 years later. And wasn't she like, she had like worked her way up and she was doing really well and everything. And then they're like, oh, yeah, you murdered this person. So yeah, you're going to jail. And like, it's because she had like, it was just that one murder. And then she kind of cleaned up her life and never did another one, but came back to haunt her.
Yeah, it was situational. Just a rage of relationship rage type of thing, and yeah, caught up with her. Thank God, and great detectives put it together and got her sent to prison. And ironically, she's been up for parole, so I think she's getting really close to getting out, which is kind of a bummer.
How many years did she end up doing?
I think it's been maybe 18 or maybe, yeah, somewhere around that vicinity, 18, 20 years or whatever. It's
That's crazy. So I never understood that. Why do some people go to jail for like 7 years for a murder, and then other people, it's like 40 or 50 or 60 years or whatever? Why is there such a big discrepancy?
it's state by state. They have all different, rules and regulations. And in California, more or less, if you do 50% of your time, so if you get sentenced for 10 years and you don't have any parole, you don't have any violations with inside the institution, you'll get out in 5 years. But you could do that one crime in California that you'll get 3 years. You go to Texas, that could be 20 years. Florida, 30 years. So it all depends on politics, population, and how many institutions are open, and what have you, and and the will of the people in that state. What are they willing to put up with?
What is the theory behind letting people out earlier for a violent crime? Is it a theory that after enough time passes, they're much less likely to reoffend? Or is it just like a financial thing? Like, we got to get these people out of here because it's too expensive to hold them in prison forever? Or
Yeah, out here in California, they claim it's overcrowding. So
Mm.
that's always been the big mantra. We don't want to open up more prisons. This is overcrowding, so we have to let these people out. So
What is
yeah.
what is your theory? What do you think, if somebody like murders somebody, do you think they should go to prison for life? Or do you think there's some people that could turn their life around and maybe they just made a mistake?
That's a tough one, Chuck. I mean, I want to believe in man has redemptive qualities. I think that's one of the best qualities. But I'm thinking about, instead of putting focus on the person that's incarcerated, putting focus on the family that's been victimized. That the victims usually get discarded and never usually end the conversation. So I try to think of them first, think it through that lens of, if I was that mother, if I was that father, son, daughter, what would I want? What's best for my psyche and my rehabilitating myself. So I think they should be first on the forefront of what's best for them, and then second, what's best for the criminal and society as a whole. So I think we have to have a true path of putting people into prisons, but having a real rehabilitation. Like I said before, in America, there's no rehabilitation. You're not going to get better by sticking people into a cage. Very few people come out with a success rate, go on to something bigger and better. So until we take a hard look at how we truly treat our criminal population inside jails and prisons, we're spinning on wheels. So if you're going to stick someone in, if they're going to do prison time, 20, 30 years, you might as well just keep them there, because that person coming out is a slim chance that they're going to be better.
Really? You don't think like someone that made a mistake, maybe they were high on drugs when they're like 19, you don't think they'd be a different person when they're like 50?
Oh yeah, there's people that have. It's definitely possible. I'm just playing the percentages.
Yeah.
But if we had a real rehabilitative, institution where we can, through holistic means, get people, teach them skills to learn, deal with anger, give them real skills to, when, if they do get placed back into society, how can we make them happy and productive and re-enter? So until that's put in, I'm going back to the percentages of success.
Yeah, like maybe they should teach like meditation and deep breathing techniques and like counseling and I think it'd be cool if they did some sort of, maybe they do this a little bit, like some sort of community, like if they had a garden or something that, people could learn how, like skills that they could use, that would not only be useful skills, but also something to keep them busy so that they're not thinking about their problems, and they can, because isn't it like, I feel like gardening, and people have said that's like a cure for depression or something.
Right. I mean, you're in touch with nature, for
Yeah.
everyone. It doesn't have to be for just prisoners. Everyone should have like a little garden, or just a walk out in nature. That's, everyone knows you're everything else evaporates after that. Once you're confronted with chirping birds and seeing squirrels or what have you, wildlife, you get back to your true self, and all that other stuff that's back in the city melts away. So same thing could be done on a small scale in prisons, and taking care of animals, horses, um, uh, cats, dogs, introducing some kind of little slices of nature, of having pride and ownership of gardens, or even music. Music's a great way to bridge the gap between people, and communicate and express themselves. I mean, when you're in a jail cell, I mean, it's very few ways to express yourself and be creative, and just be in touch with your human self, instead of just being in a constant fight or flight scenario.
Yeah. Well, and I especially think like that's something that for like a halfway house, that you could really design a very cool halfway house that could help people that are destitute, that are, addicted to drugs and homeless and stuff. And they just need a new space to be a part of community and have purpose. Like, hey, we noticed that, you're really into food. Like, why don't you work in our kitchen? We have this whole community center. You're going to live here. You're going to come downstairs and you're going to help cook meals for everybody that lives in the community center. And or gardening or whatever animals that we could have people take care of. I mean, yeah, I think they should do more stuff like that, rather than just like, I don't know. A lot of the Section 8 housing is kind of like, okay, here's your apartment and here's your house. Like, there you go. Have fun. We'll check on you like once a month. It's like, that's not really building a community, So
I agree. Yeah, teaching people how to play guitar, teaching them to play drums.
yeah,
Just learning a new thing, being obsessed with, instead of being obsessed with drugs, being obsessed with learning a new skill is great. And if you could, I always say, if you just never stop learning something, no matter what your age is. I always hear people, oh, I wish I would have learned how to play the piano. I wish I knew how to play the drums. I'm like, so if you're 60 years old, who says you can't pick it up now? What's stopping you? Do it. You want to learn scuba? Do it. You want to write a book? Go for it. There's no appropriate age. Like, yeah, if you started when you were 16, you could play every Eddie Van Halen lick, but play something. Just keep that brain moving, and it's a muscle like everything else. So that should translate to the prison population as well, because the majority of these guys are getting out. So do you want them to come out more animalistic, or you want them to come out as a productive member of society that has something to contribute and that
I
has something to
agree.
look forward
Yeah.
to?
That's great. I want to learn. One thing that I've been really wanting to learn is how to fix shit, like how to build shit and fit. I mean, I know a little like basic things, like I know how to use a screwdriver and a hammer, but I'm saying like really learn some of the things. Like I have some buddies that have really helped. Like one of my buddies helped me put in a wall, and he's like he's got the table saw and he's sawing the tiles and measuring it all perfect. I'm like, man, these are really good skills. People that remodel their bathrooms and stuff, like, I think that's amazing that people could do stuff. I want to learn how to do things like that. I think that's like a really good skill that we definitely, I think, does the world need more podcasts and more content? Probably not. Does the world need more people who know how to fix shit? Yes, definitely. Just ask like how many people are always like asking for help on like, hey, do you know how to fix this? Now we don't even fix shit. We just throw it away and buy a new thing.
Disposable society, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing like going into someone's like wood shop, and you smell that fresh lumber, fresh wood, and you see them crafting something amazing, even if it's just a table. I mean, it's something just very satisfying, with making something with your own hands, and getting creative with that, and then gifting it, or bringing it into your house, or even better, showing someone how you did that. You always say, be a mentor and have a mentor, no matter what your age is. You could always teach somebody, and then someone could always teach you, and it just keeps on revolving.
I agree. Yeah. I'm always looking for mentors, and I'm always happy to help anybody if there's anything I can help them with. Josh O'Brien says Jail Guitar Doors is an amazing program. I'm not familiar with that, but I know the song. I feel like I think Gilby Clarke did the song, but I think he did a cover. I don't think he did the original. That's a good song.
Gilby's great, right? He's playing by me, I think, in a week or two. I might go see him.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Very nice guy. Very nice
Say
guy.
hi to Troy, the drummer. He's coming on my show on, I think, tomorrow. Actually, I got to send him the link. But he's super nice guy. Like, yeah, you should talk to him. He's fun he's got a podcast too, of course, or a radio show, but similar kind of thing. But yeah, those guys are great. I loved Gilby when I was a kid. Like he was one of the first like people that I met of musicians. And I loved that first solo album. I thought it was so underrated.
Yes, what was that, the Tijuana something or Jail guitar?
Tijuana Jail was one. Cure Me or
Right.
Kill Me. The album was called Pawn Shop Guitars, I think. But yeah, I really like that. And he's fun live too. That'd be a fun concert to see. Like, I feel like he should tour with, but because it seems like they only do kind of one-offs. But it'd be
Yes.
cool to see him do like a tour with like a package, like I don't know, like with a similar band, like Faster Pussycat or something like that. That'd be fun.
Yeah, the guys from White Lion or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mostly go to punk shows?
No, I go to everything.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, I just went to see when I just bumped into Gilby was at I'm trying to think who was at the Roxy, and he was playing with Jenny V, who's from the Eagles of Death Metal, and
Oh yeah.
Slim Jim Phantom from the Stray Cats. Great, you know, great hybrid. Old people from all different spectrums were playing. Even the guys. What was the Nelson Twins? They played
Yeah.
Ricky Nelson songs, and which was amazing because I brought my old man, so they're playing all the old Ricky Nelson songs, and so it was awesome. So my dad knew all those songs, and it was great to see the Twins play again. I haven't seen them on the scene for years. So
Is this
and
one of those jam sessions or?
yeah, it was kind of like kind of an open jam session where all guys from that whole genre were just that they're all friends now, so they all jump on stage and play. So I'll see a lot of different things. So
Do
might
you
go
see a
see
lot of
Gilby.
rock stars and celebrities just like walking down the street and stuff in LA? I mean, I feel like there's so many that live there.
Man, the first thing that popped in my mind, there was the really good sushi place for me, and the singer from Great White, who's now dead.
Jack
Um,
Russell?
yes,
Yeah.
I'm eating sushi, and he was sitting directly opposite me, and I was like, "Wait a second!" I'm like, that's Jack." And I was like, "He's eating," and he looked angry too when he was eating. It was interesting to watch,
Hmm.
but he has an interesting criminal, colorful past, and that was talk about.
Yeah. Didn't he like he shot a maid or something and he robbed somebody and then shot him and then he went to jail and then the band had to go on hiatus and then he got out and then the band made it big. Yeah. He just did my show right before he passed. It was but I could tell when he did my show, I was like, ooh, I could tell something he had really like aged very
Mm,
rapidly because I'd listened to old interviews. It had been a couple of years or something, but his speaking voice, supposedly he could still sing great, but his speaking voice, he sounded kind of like an old man. It was very like
mm.
progressed, which is very sad. But I think obviously he had some health issues, so that was kind of what was going on there. Sad to see. I'm sure the whole station fire didn't help things for him, like psychologically, like just having that on your, in the back of your head at all times. Like, and so many people blamed him and stuff and thought it was his fault. And yeah, it was rough.
Yeah, that was a wild tragedy. But yeah, there's musicians all over LA. You see them constantly, so it's kind of cool.
Did you
Yeah.
ever arrest anybody famous?
Courtney Love, when she was going on,
Really?
she was going on her little spin when I think she like racked up like 3 or 4 arrests within within like a year. Thankfully, it seems like she's gotten her act together for many, many years. So God bless her. But
Has she? I haven't heard anything about her.
I
She just
know, yeah, right.
so you
What's going on
assume
with her?
it's good then?
If she's not getting arrested, it's good, right? But
oh
I
yeah.
don't know. I mean, she was a great actress. She had some really
Yeah.
good roles, and Sid and Nancy, and then the Larry Flint movie. So yeah, it'd be great to see her get back into that. But
Man
I
in the
don't know.
Moon. I love that one too with Jim Carrey. That was so good.
Yeah, she was talented and good musician. So I don't know what she's up to, but no.
I'd love to get her on my podcast. I bet she's got some stories.
You think?
And
Oh
then I
yeah.
think the daughter's like all grown up now.
Right, yeah. Frances Bean, if you do the math, like she's probably like 30 or something now, which is
Yeah, she's
crazy.
got this huge Instagram following and stuff.
Does she? Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I mean, it's just nepotism, I guess, or whatever you call it, but or people just fascinated to see, I mean, because Courtney was a great musician too. So like the daughter of two great musicians, like I don't know if she's doing music herself or what she's doing, but oh, Josh was commenting it was it's Clash song. Okay. That makes because I'm pretty sure it was a cover. That makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, that's cool. That's again, it goes one of those things where like you heard the cover and then you go back and obviously you got to go back and listen to the Clash because they're amazing.
Yeah, Josh is awesome. He's a retired U.S. Navy Seabee. Speaking of guys that could build things out of nothing, the Seabees are like the carpenters for the Navy. So whatever the
Oh,
Navy SEALs or anything else they need compounds or things built up, the Seabees are the ones that are that fighting force, but with hammers and nails and all that. So talk about guys that are very skilled. So shout out to Josh, who has his own podcast. Great friend. Thank you,
that's
Josh.
cool. Do you think some of that stuff is just natural talent that some people just have? I feel like my buddy, like he came over to help me with my sprinklers and like the sprinkler system was busted or something. So he literally opened it up and he rewired it. I was like, how did he know how to, like, it's just like, he's so smart. He has that talent. Like, I feel like some people are just naturals with that stuff. I guess with music too, though.
Right, right. To have, or a lot of it's the parents. I used to be like that. I lost that skill. Like I was able to take apart a bike and put it back together almost in the dark. But just after a while of not doing it, really not having any interest in that stuff anymore, that skill's bypassed. It's kind of like writing in script. You ever try writing something in script now? It's like, it's like, all right, how do I'm doing it in like hybrid print and script, or same thing with memorizing phone numbers. Before cell
Oh,
phones, you
yeah.
knew like 50 phone numbers and
Yeah.
addresses. Now that you don't have that, try remembering just your significant other's phone number, let alone your friends. So it's it's all within us. It's if you want to do it, if you I think we can. Others will struggle. You might struggle in a bit, but then and others will pick it up faster. But you could do it. It's just, do you want to do it? Are you
Right.
lazy or are you curious?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the other thing too that's kind of like that is the or what is he Josh saying? Thanks for the shout out. Francis being married to Tony Hawk. That's right. Yeah, I remember that. That's what it is. And so yeah, you think like the kid that they have, that'll be interesting. That yeah, but you're right. I think fitness is another example of that. Like things that maybe are not natural, but like it's how bad do you want to do it? Because I am not a naturally fit person, and my trainers are always yelling at me because I have terrible technique in terms of I still can't do I can't even do push-ups right. They're always saying, no, that's not how you do the freaking push-ups. But I just keep pushing with it and just keep trying, and it's working. I mean, I'm getting in better shape. I'm not, Arnold Schwarzenegger or anything, but like I think if you just keep going with it and the diet and all that, like you can really make a difference. And your health is so important. I'm really trying to focus more on that, especially the older I get. I'm sure you know that too. Like you're always, I always see you posting stuff about being at the gym and doing all the workouts and
Absolutely. I remember one of your goals. You were telling me that was to get like single digit body fat.
yeah.
How close are you to that now?
I got to, well, I was trying to get to 15%. That was my, like, I wanted to get at least a 15. I was close. I got to like 17. I'm gonna have to try again in 2025. I didn't make it this year, but yeah, I don't know about single digit might be a little, at some point I would get there, but I think the first step would get to 15%. And then
Mhm.
it's like maybe go down to 12. I mean, yeah, if I got to single digit, like 9%, I mean, they say like we're lower than 5% is like dangerous,
I
right?
just congratulated a friend. He got down to 8.5. I was like, wow, because him
That's
and I were very similar body weight. And I
That's
see his
probably like as low
transformation.
as you want to go, right?
Yeah, he looks amazing. Yeah, I don't think he should
Okay.
go any lower. But I was like, wow, you did it. I was so happy for him. It was great
How
to
did he
see that.
do it?
I mean, he's getting after it every day. He's got to be putting in at least minimum 2 hours. I would assume. I gotta have to call him. He's another hard rock maven, and he was in the band. He sang back in the East Coast, and yeah, I think the majority of it is food, is really being super disciplined, and then being religious with that 1 to 2 hours of intense activity. So, but he did it within. It seemed like he went from the teens to the single digits within like 8 months, which is amazing. Uh, I'll have to verify with him, but he's
Yeah.
it's great
Let
to
me
see
know
your
if you
friends
have any
do it.
tips or anything. Cause yeah, I know a lot of it is consistency, but I mean, I'll be consistent for a while and maybe it's just continuing to stick with it because then I'll do like 3 or 4 months where I'm like, no cheat, no cheat meals or nothing. And then it's like, all right, I gotta have like a cheeseburger or something, like I gotta do something. And so maybe it's just getting back on track and yeah, if you could do 8 months of hard disciplined, I think, yeah, you probably get there. So I'm gonna have to try again in 2025. I fell short of all my goals this year. Like, well, one of my goals was to be more social, and I think I've met that goal. But the body fat, I was a little bit off. And then the subscribers for my YouTube, I wanted to get 100,000 and I got like 6,000. So I'm way off. And that's why I'm like, all right, I got to find another focus in 2025 because there's just too much content. It's too competitive, too many podcasts. I don't know. I can't compete. So
Yes, I understand. We're our hardest critic. We're always going to be hard on ourselves, which is a good thing. But then you got to forgive yourself of, okay, I didn't get to single digits, but I got down to 14%. What were you before at 21, 22? So you got to look at how much progress. Like instead of year to year, look in 5-year increments. See, okay, where was I 5 years ago, and where do I want to be 5 years from now, and whittle away at that. It's like how they say, how do you eat a whale? Just one bite at a time, just little by little. We'll get there. We'll get to those single digits. Yeah, if I can get down to 10%, that would be huge. I don't
what
think
are you at now? If you don't mind me asking, are you close?
my best, I think we were like neck and neck. I think we were at like 14, and I haven't, since I retired, I haven't rechecked it. I used to go into this. They used to have a facility like a rolling trailer that you can get into a water tank. Which water was like the best way to capture the truest body fat content. So I've definitely gone up. If I had a guess, I would have to be at least 20. It was being retired, even though I'm staying active. Like you just don't realize when you're at work for 10 to 13 hours a day, like just even if you're not exercising, just that mental grind and walking everywhere and lifting, getting out of your car a million times, like you're burning so many calories. I wish I worked.
Well, see, and you carry that big vest and stuff, right? Like,
oh yeah, I mean, stress, calories, vest, equipment, constantly on the move. So even though my staying active with jujitsu and working out 6 days a week, it's been very, it's an hour here, an hour and a half there. It's not enough, like when you're working. So again, it's constantly trying to find that balance. So we'll get there, but just don't give up and just show up. That's it. Don't give up and show up.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to keep doing. And I'm going to hit the ground running. I'm still working out and everything. I'm still, I came close on the body fat, but I got to figure out another focus for the podcast. Like I do want to get to 100,000. I think I'm just going to go a different route. And so I'll hopefully reveal that soon. And I think you'll be interested in what I'm going to be doing. So I'll keep you posted. And so for people, they can follow you on Instagram, Facebook, and your podcast's on hiatus, but the old episodes are still there.
Yep. We'll hopefully add to that in 2025. Put that out to the universe.
And when will this book come out?
Oh, I haven't. Who knows? That's the literary world is it's world I'm just dabbling in now. I'm just dipping my finger into. So who knows? I have no idea.
Okay, well, keep me posted on that, and let me know if you want to come back and promote it.
Absolutely, I'll be shooting you out a copy for sure, brother.
Cool. Well, thanks. It was good to chat with you, and stay in touch. I'll let you know if I'm ever in LA, and you let me know if you're ever in Scottsdale.
I will be. I will be for sure.
Cool.
Love
keep
that.
me posted.
We'll do it. We'll do it in person, face to face, like we used to back in the day.
Yeah, it'll be good. All right, cool, man. Well, see you later, Knocko.
All right, you be safe. Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate you. Keep up the great work.
Appreciate you too. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.